She sneered and said, "Stop overreacting. It's just a trip." I didn't fight her. I just said, "Noted." When she came back, she walked in the house we built together and realized I had already walked out of the marriage. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Kevin Rourke stood at the living room window of their suburban home outside Bentonville, Arkansas, watching his wife pack the car. The morning light cut through the trees in sharp angles, illuminating dust particles that hung suspended in the air between them. Everything looked normal. The neighbor's dog barked 3 houses down. A delivery truck rumbled past. Lucy moved with practiced efficiency, her roller suitcase bumping down the front steps. But nothing was normal. Kevin had noticed it weeks ago, the way her phone was always face down now. The way she angled her body away from him when she typed. The new perfume. The gym membership she never mentioned until he saw the charge. Small things that individually meant nothing, but together formed a pattern he couldn't ignore. She came back inside, adjusting the collar of her gray jacket. It was new, too. He'd never seen it before. "You're acting weird," Lucy said, her voice carrying that edge it always did when she was on the defensive before anyone had attacked. She grabbed her purse from the kitchen counter, checked her phone again. The screen lit her face for a moment before she tucked it away. "It's just a work trip." Kevin leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. He'd rehearsed this moment in his head a dozen times over the past 3 days. Push back, demand answers, insist on the truth. But he learned something about Lucy over their 7 years of marriage. Confrontation made her better at lying. Questions gave her time to build her defenses. The moment you accused her of anything, she became the victim so convincingly that you ended up apologizing for doubting her. So he said nothing, just nodded. "Okay," he replied, keeping his voice flat. "Have a safe flight." Lucy paused, one hand on the door handle. She turned back, searching his face for something. Anger, maybe. Jealousy. Questions. The kind of reaction that would let her cry and storm out and make this his fault somehow. Kevin gave her nothing. That seemed to bother her more than any accusation could have. Her jaw tightened. She opened her mouth as if to say something else, then closed it. The silence stretched between them like a gulf neither wanted to cross. "I'll call you when I land," she finally said. "Sure." She waited another beat, then left. The door clicked shut with a finality that felt like punctuation at the end of a sentence he'd been reading for months without realizing it. Kevin watched through the window as she loaded the suitcase into her sedan. She sat in the driver's seat for almost a full minute, staring at her phone. He could see her thumbs moving rapidly across the screen, texting someone. Then she pulled out of the driveway without looking back at the house. He stood there long after her car disappeared around the corner, long after the sound of the engine faded into the ambient noise of suburban morning. The coffee maker beeped in the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, the air conditioning kicked on with a mechanical sigh. Kevin had grown up in a home where money was a weapon. His parents had divorced when he was 12, and every conversation after that had somehow circled back to who paid for what, who owed whom, who was being irresponsible. He remembered his mother crying at the kitchen table with bills spread out in front of her, remembered his father's voice on the phone saying he'd send money next week, next month, when he could. That instability had carved something into Kevin's bones, a desperate need for financial security that shaped every major decision he'd made as an adult. He'd promised himself his own family would be different. No screaming about rent. No choosing between groceries and utilities. No lies about money. Lucy had known all this. She'd held his hand in their tiny apartment 9 years ago when he'd told her about his childhood, when he'd explained why he was so careful with their budget, why he tracked every dollar. She'd called him responsible. She'd said she felt safe with him. He walked to his home office, a converted bedroom at the back of the house. His laptop sat closed on the desk, next to a framed photo from their wedding. Lucy smiling in white. Kevin looking at her like she was the only person in the world. He flipped open the laptop and logged into their joint bank account. It was the first Thursday of the month. Mortgage payment was due. He'd transferred money from savings the night before to cover it, just like he did every month. Except when he looked at the account balance. The numbers didn't make sense. Kevin blinked, refreshed the page. The balance stayed the same. They should have had close to $8,000. Enough for the mortgage, utilities, groceries, gas, and a comfortable buffer. That was how he managed it. That was the system. The account showed $1,273. Kevin's hands went cold. He clicked through to the transaction history, his pulse beginning to hammer in his ears. The transfers he'd made from savings were there. But below them, dozens of other transactions scrolled down the screen. Designer boutiques, hotel stays in cities Lucy had never mentioned visiting, first-class flight upgrades, restaurants he'd never heard of, a gym membership in Little Rock, 90 miles away, premium streaming subscriptions for services they didn't use, spa treatments, wine shipments, online shopping sites he didn't recognize. He scrolled back. 3 months, 6 months, a year. The pattern was everywhere, woven through their finances like rot through wood. Small charges, carefully spaced, so no single transaction stood out. 200 here, 300 there. Never enough to trigger an alert on his phone, but constant, relentless, adding up to thousands. Kevin sat back in his chair. The office suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. He could hear his own breathing, harsh and fast. This wasn't impulsive spending. This wasn't Lucy being careless with a credit card. This was planning. This was strategy. She'd been systematically draining their accounts while he paid every bill, covered every expense, trusted her completely. He opened a spreadsheet and began documenting everything. Each transaction, each date, each vendor. The work was mechanical, methodical. It gave him something to do with his hands while his mind tried to catch up with what his eyes were seeing. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. The room grew hot, then cooled as afternoon slipped into evening. Kevin didn't stop. He pulled up credit card statements, compared them to bank withdrawals, cross-reference dates. He built a timeline. The affair had to have started around 15 months ago. That's when the spending changed. Before that, their account had been stable, predictable. Then suddenly there were charges in Rogers, Fayetteville, Little Rock. Hotels on weekdays when Lucy was supposedly visiting her sister. Dinners for two when she claimed to be working late. And the gym membership in Little Rock. That one kept appearing. Every month, $60. For a gym 90 miles away that Lucy had never once mentioned. Kevin pulled up the gym's website. It was upscale, expensive. The kind of place that sold more lifestyle than fitness. He clicked through photos of the facility until he found what he was looking for. The members' lounge. Dimly lit, intimate. Soft music playing in the background. The caption read, "Connect with like-minded individuals in our exclusive social spaces." Of course, she hadn't joined a gym. She'd bought access to a hunting ground. By the time full darkness pressed against the office window, Kevin had compiled 47 pages of evidence. Transaction records, match dates, patterns of behavior. The scope of it was staggering. Over the past year alone, Lucy had spent nearly $18,000 of their shared money on a life he'd known nothing about. And she'd done it carefully enough that he hadn't noticed until she'd grown confident enough to take bigger risks. Kevin saved everything to a secure folder, then emailed copies to himself at 3 different addresses. He closed the laptop and sat in the dark office, listening to the house settle around him. He should have been angrier. That's what surprised him. He'd expected rage, the kind that made you want to break things and shout. But what he felt instead was a cold, clear understanding that spread through his chest like frost. Lucy hadn't just betrayed him. She'd studied him, learned his patterns, used his trust as a tool. And she'd done it all while making him feel like the problem was his anxiety about money, his need for control, his inability to just relax and enjoy life. She'd gaslit him with his own trauma. Kevin stood and walked through the house, turning on lights in each room. The kitchen where Lucy had kissed him goodbye that morning. The living room where they'd watched movies and argued about paint colors. The bedroom where she'd stopped touching him 6 months ago, always too tired, always stressed from work. He'd built this life believing it was theirs. But Lucy had been living in a different story all along, one where Kevin was just the man who paid the bills while she built something else with someone else. His phone buzzed. A text from Lucy. Landed safe. Hotel is nice. Miss you already. Kevin stared at the message. 3 lies in 3 sentences. Economy of deception. He didn't respond. Instead, he called his sister. Mara answered on the second ring, her voice wary. She lived in Fayetteville, taught high school biology, had been married to her husband Patrick for 14 years. She was 2 years younger than Kevin, but had always been the tougher one, the one who said what needed to be said even when it hurt. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "How do you know something's wrong?" "Because you never call after 8 unless something's wrong." Kevin walked to the kitchen, pulled out a chair, sat down at the table where Lucy had eaten breakfast that morning without a flicker of guilt crossing her face. "Lucy's having an affair," he said. Silence on the other end. Then Mara's exhale, long and controlled. "Tell me everything." So he did. He laid it out chronologically, clinically. The changes in behavior. The bank accounts. The spending patterns. The hotel stays. The gym membership 90 miles away. Mara didn't interrupt. She just listened, and Kevin could picture her in her own kitchen, probably pacing, probably furious. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Kevin," she finally said, her voice tight. "She didn't just cheat on you. She planned to survive without you." The words landed like a punch. Kevin closed his eyes. "I know. No, I don't think you do. She wasn't spending that money on herself. She was investing in an exit strategy, building a new life while you funded the whole thing. That's not an affair. That's embezzlement." Kevin rubbed his face with one hand. "What do I do?" "You document everything you just told me. You find a lawyer, and you file first, before she knows you know. Because the moment she realizes you've caught on, she's going to take whatever she can and disappear. She's my wife. She stopped being your wife the first time she charged a hotel room to your credit card, so she could sleep with someone else." Mara's voice cracked slightly on the last words. She'd always liked Lucy, had stood beside her at their wedding, had defended her when Kevin's friend said he was marrying too fast. "I'm sorry," Mara added, softer now. "I know this is terrible, but you can't afford to be sentimental right now." "She's not." Kevin looked around the kitchen. The refrigerator was covered with magnets from their vacations. Photos of them smiling. Lucy's handwriting on the grocery list stuck to the side. "Send me everything you found," Mara said. "I'll help you organize it." "And Kevin? Don't confront her. Not yet. Let her think you don't know. Let her get comfortable." After they hung up, Kevin forwarded all the files to Mara, then sat alone in the kitchen until nearly midnight. He didn't cry. He didn't break anything. He just sat there, feeling the foundation of his life crack and shift beneath him while the house remained standing, indifferent to the destruction happening inside its walls. Lucy called the next morning. Kevin was in the garage, pretending to organize tools while his mind ran through scenarios like a computer stuck in an error loop. "Hey," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "How are you?" "Fine. How's the conference?" "Boring. You know how these things are. A lot of talking that could have been an email." She laughed, that light sound that used to make him smile. Now it just sounded like strategy. "I miss sleeping in our bed. Our bed that you stopped wanting to share with me." "I'm sure the hotel is comfortable," Kevin said neutrally. "It's okay. Not the same, though." A pause. "Are you sure you're all right? You sound distant." There it was. The testing. Pushing to see if he suspected anything, ready to pivot to offense or defense, depending on his response. "Just busy," Kevin said. "A lot of work stuff." "Okay. Well, I should go. Session starting soon." Another pause, waited with expectation. "I love you." Kevin looked at the workbench, at the tools his father had given him years ago, before the divorce had made every interaction between them transactional. "Have a good session," he said, and hung up. He didn't say it back. For the first time in 7 years, he couldn't make himself say it back. That afternoon, Kevin drove to Fayetteville to meet with Mara. She lived in a neighborhood of older homes with big trees and front porches. Patrick answered the door, gave Kevin a tight hug without saying anything, then disappeared upstairs to give them privacy. Mara had printed out everything. The documents covered her dining room table in neat stacks. "I color-coded by category," she said, pointing to different piles. "Red for hotel charges, blue for restaurants, yellow for shopping, green for the gym and other recurring subscriptions." Kevin stared at the rainbow of evidence. Seeing it printed, organized, made it undeniable in a way that digital files hadn't. $18,467, Mara said quietly. That's what she spent in the last 13 months. On him, on herself, on a life that didn't include you except as a funding source. Kevin picked up one of the red sheets. A hotel in Little Rock. 2 nights. The date was 3 months ago, when Lucy had told him she was helping her sister move furniture. I called her sister, Mara said, watching him. Don't be mad. I used the excuse that I wanted to borrow a slow cooker. She never mentioned Lucy helping her move. Said she hired movers. Kevin set down the paper. You're thorough. I'm angry. There's a difference. Mara crossed her arms. You need to see a lawyer. Soon. Like this week soon. I don't even know where to start. Patrick's cousin is a divorce attorney. Her name is Denise Halpern. She's good. Straightforward, doesn't sugarcoat things. I already called her. She can see you tomorrow afternoon if you want. Kevin wanted to be surprised that Mara had moved this fast, but he wasn't. When their parents divorced, she'd been the one who'd helped their mother navigate the legal system, who'd sat with her through meetings and court dates. She'd been 15 years old and more competent than most adults. Tomorrow, Kevin repeated. Tomorrow. Or next week. Or next month. But the longer you wait, the more time Lucy has to move assets around. And trust me, if she's smart enough to do all this without you noticing, she's smart enough to hide money. Kevin thought about the bank account, about how Lucy always claimed she wasn't good with numbers, how she'd let him handle everything financial while praising his responsibility. She played a role, and he believed every word of it. Tomorrow, he said. Set it up. Lucy came home 3 days later, on a Sunday evening when the sun was setting orange and gold through the living room windows. Kevin heard her car in the driveway, heard the trunk slam, heard her keys in the door. She came in carrying her suitcase, looking tired. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup. The gray jacket was gone, replaced by a sweatshirt that said Arkansas Razorbacks across the front. She saw Kevin standing in the kitchen, and immediately her expression shifted, softened. Her eyes went bright with tears that appeared too quickly to be completely genuine. I missed you so much, she said, her voice breaking. She dropped the suitcase and moved toward him like she might hug him. Kevin didn't step back, but he didn't step forward either. He just stood there, hands in his pockets. Lucy stopped a few feet away, the tears still building. It was awful, she said. The conference, the traveling, being away from home. I felt so lonely. She pressed a hand to her chest. I know things have been hard between us lately. I know I've been distant. But being away made me realize how much I need you. How much I need us. Kevin watched her performance with a strange sense of detachment. He could see every technique, every calculated gesture. The way she angled her body to look smaller. The tremor in her voice. The tears that stayed in her eyes without falling, perfect and glistening. How was the conference? He asked. Lucy blinked, thrown by the question. She'd expected him to comfort her, to ask what was wrong, to give her an opening for this script she'd prepared. It was fine, she said. Educational. You know, learn anything useful? Kevin, I'm trying to talk to you about us. The tears were gone now, replaced by a flicker of irritation. Can we please sit down and have a real conversation? Sure. They moved to the living room. Lucy sat on the couch, pulling her knees up and wrapping her arms around them. The vulnerable pose. Kevin sat in the armchair across from her, maintaining distance. I've been thinking a lot, Lucy began, about our marriage, about where we are. And I think, she paused, eyes searching his face. I think we need to reconnect, go to counseling maybe, take a trip together. Something to remind us why we fell in love. Okay, Kevin said. Okay. Lucy repeated. That's it? Just okay. What do you want me to say? I want you to say something. I want you to care. Her voice rose, the tears returning. I just spent 3 days realizing how much I love you, and you're sitting there like we're talking about the weather. Kevin could see the trap being laid. If he stayed calm, he was emotionally distant, and that justified whatever she'd done. If he got angry, she could paint him as volatile, and that justified whatever she'd done. There was no right response that didn't play in her narrative. I think counseling sounds good, he said evenly. Lucy stared at him. Then she exploded. You're so controlling, she shouted. standing up. Do you know that? Everything has to be your way, on your schedule, handled your way. I can't breathe in this house. I can't make a decision without you analyzing it and judging me and making me feel like I'm doing everything wrong. When did I do that? Always. You do it always. The way you look at me when I buy something. The way you check the bank account constantly like I'm going to rob you. The way you question everything I do. She was pacing now, her hands gesturing wildly. I needed space. I needed to feel like I'm my own person and not just your wife who lives in your house and follows your rules. Kevin sat quietly, letting her rant. It was fascinating in a horrible way, watching her rewrite their history in real time. The narrative was clear now. He was the villain, the controlling husband, the man who made her feel trapped. She'd been building this story for months, probably telling it to whoever she was sleeping with, convincing herself it was true. Are you even listening to me? Lucy demanded. I'm listening. Then say something. What do you want me to say, Lucy? She stopped pacing, breathing hard. Then her face crumpled and the tears came for real this time, streaming down her cheeks. I want you to fight for me, she whispered. I want you to show me you care. I want you to prove that I matter to you. Kevin almost laughed. The audacity of it was stunning. She'd spent months betraying him, stealing from him, building a life behind his back. And now she was demanding that he prove his love to her. I think you should stay at your sister's tonight, he said quietly. Give us both some space to think. Lucy's expression went through several transformations in rapid succession. Shock, anger, calculation. Then she settled on wounded. You're kicking me out? I'm suggesting we take a night apart. This is my house too. I know. I'm not kicking you out. I'm asking for space. So you get to decide when we need space. Kevin stood up. You just spent 10 minutes yelling at me about feeling trapped and needing freedom. I'm giving you that. Lucy opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She couldn't argue without contradicting everything she'd just said. The trap had snapped shut on her instead. Fine, she spat. I'll go. But we're going to talk about this. About everything. About how you never listen. How you never see me. How you make me feel invisible in my own life. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then turned back. I deserve to be happy, she said, her voice shaking. I deserve that, Kevin. I know you do, he replied. She waited for more, but Kevin offered nothing else. So she left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Kevin stood in the living room for a long moment after she left, listening to her car start and drive away. Then he went upstairs to their bedroom and began going through her things methodically, carefully, documenting everything with photos as Denise had instructed. In the back of Lucy's closet, behind a stack of shoe boxes, he found the second phone. It was cheap, a burner, the kind you could buy with cash at any big box store. Kevin powered it on. No password. Lucy hadn't thought she'd need one. The messages went back over a year. Hundreds of them. All to one contact, saved simply as J. Kevin sat on the edge of the bed and read through them chronologically. It was worse than he'd imagined and exactly what he'd expected at the same time. The affair had started at that gym in Little Rock. Jay was a personal trainer, young from the photos, handsome in a generic way. In the early messages, Lucy had been coy, flirtatious. Jay had responded enthusiastically. Within 3 months, they'd progressed to explicit messages. Plans to meet, hotels booked, restaurants chosen, and woven through everything was Lucy's complaint about Kevin. He's so boring. He doesn't understand me. He cares more about money than making memories. I feel like a prisoner in my own marriage. Kevin took screenshots of everything. Months of evidence. Clear, undeniable proof. And the most damaging detail. Lucy had spent thousands of Kevin's money taking Jay on dates, buying him gifts, paying for hotel rooms. Jay, for his part, never paid for anything. Every charge in the messages that mentioned money was covered by Lucy, who'd used Kevin's money, their money, marital funds that she'd converted into an investment in her affair. Kevin forwarded everything to his encrypted email, then put the phone back exactly where he'd found it. When he went downstairs, the house felt different. Emptier but also cleaner somehow, like removing a source of infection. The next morning, Kevin met with Denise Halpern in her office in downtown Fayetteville. She was in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair, pulled into a practical bun and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her office was spare, organized, no nonsense. "Tell me everything," she said, settling behind her desk with a legal pad. Kevin did. He laid it out the same way he had for Mara, but with more detail, more dates, more specifics. Denise took notes, occasionally stopping him to ask clarifying questions. When he got to the part about the second phone and the messages, Denise looked up. "You have screenshots?" Kevin pulled out his phone and forwarded them to her. Denise scrolled through them, her expression never changing. "This is good," she said. "Clear evidence of adultery, which Arkansas is still a fault state for. And the financial records showing she used marital funds to support the affair? That's dissipation of assets. Courts don't look kindly on that." "What does that mean?" "It means she spent joint money on something that had no benefit to the marriage. In fact, it actively harmed the marriage. When we divide assets, the court will likely factor that in. She may be ordered to pay you back." Kevin felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief exactly, but a sense that the scales might balance after all. "How does this work?" he asked. Denise leaned back in her chair. "We file for divorce. Given what you've shown me, we'll cite adultery as grounds, which can affect property division and alimony. Arkansas tends toward equitable distribution, not necessarily equal. The court looks at factors like income, earning potential, contributions to the marriage, and misconduct. She'll fight it. Probably. Most people do. But Kevin, you have a paper trail that would make prosecutors jealous. Bank statements, hotel receipts, messages explicitly detailing the affair and the spending. Unless she has something equally damaging on you, she's not in a strong position. I've never cheated on her. I've never hidden money or spent anything without her knowledge." "Good. Keep it that way. Don't do anything stupid between now and when we file. Don't empty any accounts. Don't damage any property. Don't threaten her. Just document everything, maintain the status quo, and let the legal process work." Kevin nodded. "When do we file? How fast do you want to move?" "Fast." Denise smiled slightly. "Good. Decisive is good. I'll have the papers drawn up by end of week. We'll file next Monday. She'll be served, probably at work, which is standard. Then things will get messy for a while. But based on what I'm seeing, you're going to come through this okay." Kevin left the office feeling strange. Not happy, but steady, like he'd been drifting and had finally found solid ground again. That night, Lucy came home. She was calmer, more composed. She'd reset her strategy during the day at her sister's. "I'm sorry about last night," she said. "I was emotional, stressed. I shouldn't have yelled. It's okay. Can we talk? Really talk?" They sat at the kitchen table. Lucy had brought takeout, Chinese food from the place they used to go to when they first dated. Another calculated choice. "I think you're right," she said, opening containers. "I think we do need space. Not a lot, but maybe some time to figure out what we both want." Kevin watched her, recognizing the new approach. She'd gone from demanding reconciliation to suggesting separation, testing to see if he'd panic, if he'd beg her to stay. "If that's what you need," he said. Lucy blinked. Wrong response again. "I'm not saying I want to separate," she clarified. "Just that maybe I should get my own apartment for a few months. Keep working on myself. We can still see each other, go to counseling, work on things. And the money for this apartment would come from where?" Her jaw tightened. "I have some savings." "Do you?" The question hung between them. Lucy's eyes narrowed. "What are you implying?" "Nothing. Just asking where the money would come from." "I work, Kevin. I contribute." "I know you do." She stared at him, trying to read him, frustrated by his lack of reaction. Kevin kept his face neutral, his voice even. He'd learned from Denise and from Mara that giving her nothing was more powerful than giving her anything. "Fine," Lucy said. "I'll figure it out. Maybe my sister will loan me some money. Maybe." They ate in silence. The food was cold by now, congealed. Kevin forced down a few bites to maintain normalcy. "I'm going to stay at my sister's again tonight," Lucy announced. "I think it's better if we have some space while we figure this out." "Okay." She waited for him to protest. He didn't. After she left, Kevin cleaned up the takeout containers, washed the dishes, and went upstairs. In their bedroom, he noticed Lucy had taken more clothes. Not everything, but enough for an extended stay. She was preparing, moving things out slowly. building her exit. Kevin lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Denise's words. She's not in a strong position. That should have felt good, but mostly it just felt sad. 7 years of marriage, ending not with a fight or a revelation, but with careful documentation and legal strategy. But Lucy had set the terms of this war long ago. Kevin was just finally reading the battlefield map. The papers were filed the following Monday. Kevin was at work when he got the call from Denise. "It's done," she said. "Sheriff will serve her this afternoon, probably at her office. Make sure you're not alone when she finds out. She's going to call you. Probably angry. I'll be with Mara." "Good. And Kevin? Don't answer her calls. Not today. Let her sit with it. Tomorrow you can answer, but keep it brief and don't discuss anything substantive without me present." Kevin thanked her and hung up. His hands were shaking slightly. This was real now. Final. He left work early, drove to Mara's house. She was expecting him, had coffee made, and Patrick had left them alone again. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Numb. That's normal." They sat in her living room, not really talking, just waiting. Kevin's phone started ringing at 3:30. "Lucy." He let go to voicemail. It rang again, and again. 10 calls in 20 minutes. Then the voicemail started. Kevin put his phone on silent. At 5, a text came through. "How could you?" Then another. "After everything I said about wanting to work on US, you file for divorce? Call me right now." Kevin, I swear to God. Mara watched the messages pop up on his screen. "She's spiraling." "Good. Damn," Mara said. "That's cold. She taught me how." The messages continued into the evening. Lucy cycling through anger and pleading and threats and tears, all communicated through desperate texts because Kevin refused to answer his phone. Finally, around 8, one last message. "Fine. Don't talk to me. But you're going to regret this. You're going to regret trying to destroy me." Kevin showed it to Mara. "Screenshot that," she said immediately. "Anything that could be construed as a threat, you document. She's going to say things she'll regret. Make sure there's a record." Kevin did, then finally turned his phone off completely. The silence was remarkable. "Stay here tonight," Mara said. "Guest room is ready." Kevin did. He slept surprisingly well, better than he had in months. When he woke up the next morning and checked his phone, there were 37 new messages from Lucy and 6 voicemails. He deleted them all without reading or listening. Then he called Denise. "She's responding emotionally," he said. "Lots of angry messages. Expected. Her lawyer will calm her down. We should hear from them in the next few days with a response to the filing." Denise paused. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay." "Good. Stay that way. This is going to get worse before it gets better." She wasn't wrong. Lucy's response to the divorce filing came a week later, and it was vicious. She was asking for full spousal support, 50% of Kevin's business, and she wanted to keep the house. Kevin read through the demands with Denise in her office. "Could you get all this?" he asked. "Not likely. She's overreaching, which is common. She's trying to scare you into settling. But look at her reasoning." Denise pointed to a section. "She claims emotional neglect, says you were financially controlling, that she's entitled to maintain the lifestyle you established during the marriage." "I wasn't controlling. I was paying our bills." "I know. That's what the bank records will show. She spent $18,000 on an affair while you covered every legitimate expense. That's not control. That's her taking advantage." Denise set down the papers. "We're going to respond point by point, and then we're going to request discovery. Every bank statement, every credit card, every transaction for the past 2 years. We'll bury her in her own evidence." The court date arrived on a cold morning in early December. Kevin wore his only suit, the one he'd bought for weddings and funerals. He met Denise outside the courthouse, a dated building in Fayetteville with a rotunda and worn stone steps. Lucy was already inside with her lawyer, a man named Robertson who had a reputation for aggressive tactics. Kevin had seen him once before, briefly, at a company party years ago. He remembered thinking the man looked like he enjoyed arguing. They gathered in a small courtroom with wood paneling and fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Patricia Holloway, who had a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and low tolerance for games. Lucy looked different, thinner. dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She wore a conservative blue dress and minimal jewelry, the picture of a wronged wife. When Kevin entered, she looked at him with an expression that might have been grief or might have been calculation. He couldn't tell anymore. Judge Holloway settled behind the bench, reviewed some papers, then looked up. This is a preliminary hearing regarding Rourke versus Rourke. We're here to address temporary orders while the divorce proceeds. I've reviewed both filings. Mr. Chun, your client is asking for quite a bit. Robert Chun stood. He was smooth, practiced. Your Honor, my client has been the victim of a controlling marriage where financial access was restricted and emotional support was withheld. She's asking for what's necessary to maintain stability while this case resolves. Denise stood. Your Honor, we have extensive documentation showing Mrs. Rourke had full access to marital funds, which she used to conduct and finance an extramarital affair over the course of 13 months. We're prepared to present bank statements, hotel receipts, and messages that clearly establish a pattern of dissipation of assets. Judge Holloway looked at Lucy. Mrs. Rourke, is it true you used marital funds for an extramarital relationship? Lucy's lawyer started to answer, but the judge raised a hand. I asked Mrs. Rourke. Lucy stood slowly. Kevin could see her hands shaking. We were having problems, she said. I made mistakes, but Kevin made me feel alone. Mrs. Rourke, Judge Holloway interrupted. Simple yes or no. Did you use marital funds for an extramarital relationship? Lucy's mouth opened, closed. She looked at her lawyer, who gave the smallest nod. Yes, she whispered. And Mr. Rourke, did you have knowledge of or consent to this use of funds? Kevin stood. No, Your Honor. Judge Holloway made a note. I'm denying the request for temporary spousal support. I'm also denying Mrs. Rourke's request for exclusive use of the marital home. Both parties will maintain status quo financial arrangements until trial, with one exception. Mrs. Rourke, you're ordered not to make any withdrawals or charges from joint accounts without written agreement from Mr. Rourke or court order. Robert Chun started to object, but Judge Holloway cut him off. Don't bother, counselor. Your client systematically drained marital funds for personal entertainment while conducting an affair. I'm not rewarding that behavior. She looked at both lawyers. Discovery is open. Trial is set for 8 weeks from today. I suggest both parties use that time to consider what a fair settlement looks like, because if I have to make these decisions for you, nobody's going to be happy. Dismissed. Outside the courthouse, Kevin stood on the steps breathing cold air that burned his lungs. Mara had been waiting in the public seating area and came out to join him. That went well, Denise said, tucking papers into her briefcase. Judge Holloway is tough but fair. The fact that she shut down the support request immediately is a good sign. Kevin watched Lucy and her lawyer exit through a different door. She was crying. Not the practiced tears from before, but real ones, her shoulders shaking. For a moment, Kevin felt something. Not sympathy exactly, but a distant echo of what he used to feel when he saw her hurt. Then he remembered the phone messages, the bank statements, the year of lies. The feeling passed. Discovery was brutal. Every financial document from the past 2 years had to be produced, cataloged, explained. Kevin turned over everything cleanly because there was nothing to hide. Every dollar he'd spent had a receipt, a purpose, a clear place in their shared life. Lucy's discovery was different. She claimed she couldn't find records for several accounts. Said she deleted messages because they were too painful. Couldn't explain charges that appeared in 2 different cities on the same day because she must have lost track of where she was. Her story was falling apart under the weight of its own contradictions. The bank statements told a clear narrative. Kevin's name on every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every grocery trip, every legitimate expense. Lucy's name on designer boutiques, hotels, restaurants, the gym in Little Rock, and dozens of charges in cities she'd never mentioned visiting. The phone records were worse. Hundreds of calls to Jay's number, hours at a time. All while Lucy had told Kevin she was at work, visiting family, running errands. Denise compiled it into a presentation for trial. 50 slides of pure evidence. She's going to settle, Denise said one afternoon about a week before trial. Or she should. Her lawyer has to see she has no defense. But Lucy didn't settle. She doubled down. Her counter-narrative, according to amended filings, was that Kevin had driven her to the affair through emotional neglect, that he'd been so focused on work and money that she'd felt abandoned, that the spending was her way of trying to feel valued when her own husband wouldn't value her. It was absurd, but was also strategic. Lucy was betting that she could manipulate a jury or judge into sympathizing with her by playing the victim of a cold, calculating husband who cared more about dollars than connection. Kevin read her lawyer's arguments and felt nothing but a tired kind of disappointment. The trial began on a Tuesday morning in January. The courtroom was fuller this time, with a court reporter and a jury of 8 people who would help inform Judge Holloway's decision. Opening statements were predictable. Denise laid out the timeline of deception. Robert Chen painted Lucy as a woman suffering in an emotionally barren marriage. Then came testimony. Kevin went first. He walked through their relationship chronologically, meeting Lucy at a friend's wedding, dating for 2 years, getting married, building a life. He kept his voice steady, factual, letting the story speak for itself. When Robert Chun cross-examined him, the questions were pointed. Mr. Rourke, would you say you're a controlling person? No, but you managed all the finances, correct? We agreed on that arrangement. Lucy said she preferred not to handle it. Or did you prefer she not handle it so you could maintain power? Kevin looked at the lawyer evenly. I handle finances because I'm good at it, and Lucy said she wasn't interested. If she'd wanted joint management at any point, I would have agreed. But she didn't have access to accounts without your knowledge. She had full access. Her name was on everything. She had cards, online banking, complete transparency. Yet you tracked her spending. I tracked her spending. Both of ours. That's called budgeting. The exchange went on for an hour. Kevin didn't budge, didn't get emotional, didn't take the bait. He just answered honestly, and every answer painted Lucy's narrative as the fiction it was. Then Lucy took the stand. She'd clearly been coached. She spoke softly, dabbed at her eyes with tissue, looked at the jury with wounded vulnerability. Kevin is a good man, she began. I don't want to hurt him, but our marriage became so lonely. He was always working, always managing, always focused on the next goal. I tried to talk to him about how I felt, but he'd just solve it like a problem. Buy me something. Schedule a date night. But he never just saw me. It was a compelling performance. 2 of the jurors were leaning forward, sympathetic. Then Denise began cross-examination. Mrs. Rourke, you testified that your husband didn't see you, but he saw $18,000 missing from your accounts, didn't he? Lucy faltered. I made mistakes. You made choices. Let's walk through them. Denise pulled up the first slide. January 15th, Hotel Montague in Little Rock. $460. What was that for? I needed time away. With Jay, correct? Lucy hesitated. Yes. And Mr. Rourke paid for that hotel room where you slept with another man? It was joint money, which you spent without his knowledge or consent on an affair. Let's continue. February 3rd, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in Rogers. $235. Dinner for 2. Yes. With Jay. Yes. March 10th, premium spa package at Elysian Waters. $390. For yourself? Yes. Did you invite your husband to join you? He wouldn't have wanted to. Did you ask him? Silence. Mrs. Rourke, did you ask him? No. Because you were going with Jay afterward, weren't you? Lucy's composure cracked. You're twisting everything. I'm reading bank statements. Let's look at the messages next. Denise pulled up screenshots of text between Lucy and Jay. March 18th. You wrote, Kevin is so clueless. He has no idea I spent his money on your birthday gift. Did you write that? Lucy's face went white. I don't remember. The messages are time-stamped and retrieved from your phone. April 22nd. You wrote, I can't believe how easy it is to drain our account while he pays all the bills. Did you write that? I was angry. You were proud. You were bragging to your lover about stealing from your husband. Denise's voice was flat, factual, devastating. May 14th. You wrote, if he ever finds out, I'll just cry and blame him for neglecting me. He'll buy it because he always feels guilty. Did you write that, Mrs. Rourke? The courtroom was dead silent. Lucy was crying now, but they weren't strategic tears anymore. These were tears of someone whose carefully constructed facade had just collapsed in front of an audience. "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "Then what was it like? Explain to the jury how spending nearly $20,000 of your husband's money on an affair, while he paid every bill, is anything other than theft and betrayal." Lucy couldn't answer. She just sat there, crying, while her lawyer called for a recess. Judge Holloway granted it. The jury filed out. Kevin sat in the courtroom, feeling oddly calm. This was it. The truth, finally out in the open where everyone could see it. When trial resumed after lunch, Lucy's lawyer called her sister as a character witness. She tried to paint Lucy as someone who'd struggled in the marriage, who'd felt unsupported. But Denise's cross-examination revealed that Lucy's sister had never met Jay, never knew about the affair, and had been lied to about Lucy's whereabouts multiple times. The defense rested with almost nothing accomplished. Denise called Kevin's sister Mara as a rebuttal witness. She testified about the phone call when Kevin discovered everything about his devastation, about the way he'd tried to make the marriage work even as Lucy was systematically betraying him. Closing arguments were stark. Denise was brief. The evidence speaks for itself. Mrs. Rourke didn't make mistakes. She made choices. Calculated, deliberate choices to deceive her husband, steal marital funds, and blame him for her own actions. Mr. Rourke is asking this court for what he's always asked for: fairness. Fair division. Fair accounting. The truth. Robert Chin's closing was desperate, appealing to sympathy and second chances. But the damage was done. Judge Holloway sent the jury to deliberate. They were back in 90 minutes. The forewoman stood and read the verdict. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Kevin Rourke, on all counts. We recommend full dissolution of marriage with equitable division of assets after accounting for dissipation. We recommend denial of spousal support and recommend Mr. Rourke be awarded reimbursement for funds used to finance Mrs. Rourke's extramarital affair." Judge Holloway thanked the jury and turned to Lucy. "Mrs. Rourke, I've seen a lot of cases in my time on this bench. Most divorces involve some level of deception or selfishness. But what you did goes beyond that. You systematically exploited your husband's trust, weaponized his trauma about money, and then attempted to paint yourself as a victim when confronted with evidence of your own choices." Lucy was sobbing openly now, her lawyer's hand on her shoulder. "I'm awarding the marital home to Mr. Rourke. I'm ordering you to repay $7,000 to compensate for the dissipation of assets, to be paid over 2 years. I'm denying your request for spousal support. Mr. Rourke will retain his business interests. You will split remaining liquid assets equally after the reimbursement is complete." Judge Holloway closed her file. "This court does not reward deception, Mrs. Rourke. I hope you learn from this." Dismissed. Kevin stood as the courtroom began to empty. Lucy didn't look at him. She left through the side door with her lawyer, still crying, the sound echoing in the marble hallway. Denise shook Kevin's hand. "It's over. You did well. Thank you. I mean it. A lot of people fall apart on the stand. You held steady. That mattered." Outside, Mara was waiting. She hugged Kevin hard. "Proud of you," she said. Kevin didn't know what to say to that. He didn't feel proud. He felt tired, hollowed out, like he'd won something he'd never wanted to fight for in the first place. But he'd won. That was something. Act End 3. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Kevin moved out of the house in Bentonville. It held too many ghosts, too many memories that had been revealed as lies. He found a smaller place near Beaver Lake, a cabin-style home with big windows and a deck overlooking the water. It was peaceful, simple, his. He'd taken a buyout from his company and was consulting now, working from home, building something new on his own terms. The money was decent. Not wealth, but security. That was all he'd ever really wanted anyway. Mara visited often. Patrick came with her sometimes. They'd grill on the deck and watch the sunset turn the lake orange and purple. They didn't talk much about Lucy. There wasn't much to say. Kevin heard through mutual friends that Lucy had struggled after the divorce. She'd moved to Little Rock initially, tried to restart there. But jobs didn't last. Relationships didn't stick. The story followed her somehow, the way these things do in smaller communities. People talked. She'd moved again, somewhere out of state. Kevin didn't know where and didn't care to know. Jay had disappeared from her life almost immediately once legal trouble appeared. Turns out when you're the affair and not the source of funding, the dynamic changes. Lucy had learned that lesson too late. One evening in late summer, Kevin's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He almost deleted it without reading. But something made him open it. "I never meant to hurt you. I know that doesn't matter now, but I need you to know I'm sorry. For everything." Kevin read it twice. It was Lucy. Had to be. The phrasing was too familiar. He sat on his deck with the phone in his hand, watching the last light fade from the sky. He thought about replying. Thought about what he might say. In the end, he deleted the message without responding. Some apologies come too late. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Lucy had made her choices. Kevin had made his. The aftermath was just learning to live with the consequences. He learned that from her, in a way. She taught him that you don't always get closure. You don't always get the final word or the perfect ending. Sometimes you just get distance and time and the slow work of rebuilding yourself. Kevin set his phone down and looked out at the lake. The water was still, reflecting stars as they began to appear. Somewhere out there, Lucy was dealing with her own aftermath. Maybe she was sorry. Maybe she wasn't. Either way, it wasn't his problem anymore. He'd protected his future. He'd exposed the truth. He'd walked away without forgiving, but also without the weight of her lies pulling him down. And that was enough. That had to be enough. Inside the cabin, his laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. A client email he needed to answer. Normal work. Normal life. The kind of boring, stable existence that Lucy had claimed was suffocating. Kevin smiled slightly. Boring was fine. Boring was honest. Boring meant no surprises, no hidden phones, no mysterious charges. He'd take boring over betrayal any day. The months turned into a year. Kevin dated occasionally, nothing serious. He wasn't ready for serious. Maybe he wouldn't be for a while. That was okay, too. Mara pushed him sometimes to put himself out there, to trust again. Kevin listened and nodded and didn't commit to anything. Trust wasn't something you decided to feel. It was something you earned back slowly, carefully, with evidence and time. Lucy had stolen a lot from him. Money. Years. The easy confidence he used to have in his own judgment. But she hadn't destroyed him. He'd made sure of that by fighting back, by refusing to be the villain in her narrative, by standing firm when everything inside him wanted to collapse. The legal win hadn't been about revenge. It had been about justice, about making sure that actions had consequences, about refusing to let her rewrite history into a story where she was blameless and he was somehow at fault for her betrayal. Judge Holloway's words stayed with him. This court does not reward deception. Neither did life, in the end. Lucy had found that out. Kevin had watched it happen from a distance, not with satisfaction, but with a grim kind of understanding. You reap what you sow. It's a cliche because it's true. Lucy had sown lies and reaped loneliness. Kevin had sown patience and truth and reaped peace, however hard won. On the anniversary of the day he discovered the drained bank account, Kevin sat on his deck and raised a beer to himself. To survival, to rebuilding, to the future he'd protected by refusing to be destroyed. The sun set over Beaver Lake in shades of gold and amber. The air smelled like pine and water and summer ending. Kevin breathed it in, let it fill his lungs, let it remind him that this life, this quiet, honest, boring life was worth fighting for. He'd won by refusing to be broken. And that was the hardest karma of all for someone who'd expected to take everything and still be seen as the victim. Lucy had gambled on Kevin's love, making him weak. She'd been wrong. His love had made him strong enough to walk away. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered.